FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and today is July 2nd, 2019. Only about 12 more days to enter the Bitcoin contest. You know the rules. What will be the price of Bitcoin? Midnight, July 20th. Send in your entry no later than 11:59 p.m. of July 14th. And you have to beat me. Mine was 66.50. That won't be too hard at this point, so it would appear, but you never know with this erstwhile kleptocurrency for sure. Hey, and what's the prize? Well, if we get over 1,000 entries, the grand prize will be 100 pre-1965 quarters. And for the first 5 runner-ups, you will each receive 10 of these pre-1965 quarters, which the price of silver has gone up a little bit recently. So it's a nice little pocket change, literally, that actually has some substance. You know the email address, kl@kerrylutz.com. Well, for a closer look at Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, Eric Wade is back with us now. Eric, you're an authority on the cryptocurrency space. What the heck is going on here?
Well, thank you. This is very typical Bitcoin consolidation between two extremes, obviously, right? And anybody who's been watching the crypto space knows that it's pretty exciting. It's pretty volatile. But in some sense, you could also say it's young, right? It's almost like an immature asset class that gets overly excited when things are great, and just as much so gets overly unhappy when things are bad. So we're coming out of a long, brutal bear market. That's definitely history behind us, but yet people still have this feel like it's still affecting them, I think, because it's the price dropping from 20,000 a year and a half ago all the way down to about a half a year ago lows in the 3,000, 4,000 range, right? Mm-hmm. And it just left such a huge impression on people that I think they're kind of gun shy. So we get a good, strong rally going. All the fundamentals look good. Actually, some decent global currency excuses for why would you care about Bitcoin, right? The dollar might be weakening. That's a great case for Bitcoin. Gold is strengthening up as a result of that. We may have these trade wars going. This is all great cases for Bitcoin. And so I think everybody got a little overly exuberant, and they shot what should have been a nice building over time, right? If it's a currency, it's supposed to move somewhat slowly. And if it's an asset, then I think people just piled on a little too fast, ran out of sellers, price shot up so fast that of course there's going to be profit taking, even though the fundamentals haven't changed. So now we're kind of in a position where people that have traded Bitcoin before are waiting for about a 40% pullback from the recent peak. That would put it in the mid 8s. And people that have just seen it last week around 14,000 or so are thinking, well, this is a good price to get in. I don't want to miss out. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to find that balance between, should we let Bitcoin really do its historical correction of 40%, or are we going to be a little eager? And that, I think that harkens back to kind of the immaturity that, like, if you say, compare it to maybe a gold investor. Gold investors, and I'm a crypto investor, I love it. So no knock on them for it being somewhat immature, but the whole industry is about 10 years old, right? Yes, and most of the guys that are in it are relatively young investors. Some of them don't even have any other investments besides crypto. So I think it just moves faster. I think they get excited. I think it moves faster. I think that's what we're seeing. So even the consolidations should be faster. Something that might take a year with gold or a decade, right? can happen within months in Bitcoin. And we moved so fast from 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and then peaked at 14.
Right.
There's going to be some give back. There's going to be some give back, especially among the professional traders out there who are getting to be more and more prevalent in Bitcoin.
Right. All right. Well, I'll buy that. It's brand new. One thing though, one of our guests, a gentleman by the name of Charles Nenner, who is like one of the all-time great cycle investors. He says we got 10 years worth of Bitcoin numbers now. He can track the cycles in it. You think it's possible to track cycles in Bitcoin, or are we just reaching for too much?
I think it's possible to track them because there are some macros that we can track, right? The data that you can gather on Bitcoin is just phenomenal. How many wallets, how many transactions, all the way down to how many transactions per minute, right? So this is all public on the public blockchain that you can look. So to that end, Charles is absolutely right. You can track a lot of what is going on, and then you can kind of overlay it on, well, how do other assets behave when this happens? And you can also look at these historical, buys and then huge runs and then huge sell-offs. You can make these educated guesses. But on the other hand, Bitcoin is somewhat unique in that every participant around the world trades on the same schedule. There's no weekends. It's 24/7. So, you used to have this phenomenon of the New Yorkers wake up and figure out what happened in Europe, and the Asians wake up and figure out what happened in San Francisco, et cetera. There's no such thing anymore, right? We're all trading all the time. So I think, some of the, what's a 200-day moving average worth? And of course, that's right. That's been called the holy grail of indicators, the 200-day moving average.
Golden
what does that mean when we're not? Yeah. Is it the same when we're trading 24 hours a day? No weekends, no holidays, no bankers' hours, right? So I think the industry is starting to try to figure out, how do we reconcile this? It is a golden cross is a golden cross, but where do we calculate these things? And I'm seeing the word Fibonacci more than I've ever thought I'd ever see it anywhere, because I think most of the guys who are looking at this are trying to think, well, if we're all technically savvy, should we just be looking at the technical indicators on this? So it's almost like a laboratory where you get to experiment between the macro thinkers and the people who've seen more than one rodeo in their lifetime. Right? And then there's the people that are just looking at the numbers of it and trying to make old systems work for a completely different asset class. But I think there are, because to answer your question, I think there are possibilities that we can look at these cyclically, as far as like how much the inflation rate of Bitcoin is, right? There's new blocks minted every 10 minutes that kick out another 12.5 Bitcoin for the system. And that's going to drop in half in about a year. So we can kind of predict that, and we can say, well, what happened a year before the last halvening? What happened the year after the last halvening? Things like that. And we don't have very many of them to look at, but we'll have more and more as time goes by. So anybody who is savvy enough to start looking for those clues, I think I think that's a good move on his part to recognize that they're probably hard to see, but you won't see them at all if you're not looking for them.
Yeah. Agreed.
Question.
Hey, it's still new. There's still other currencies which may far eclipse and surpass Bitcoin. I'm very, as far as Bitcoin goes for the short run, probably going to do well and, surprise to the upside. But in the long run, I think the architecture of Bitcoin, the security issues, and so many other things are going to eventually cause it to phase out. But that's just my opinion.
Possible. I imagine it would take a pretty noteworthy event for that to play out. But you're right. It is a bit of a moving target, right? This especially security, and the notion always is that the hackers are always one step ahead of the defenders. And with Bitcoin, it's no different. The organization who's always trying to keep the code improving moves pretty slowly.
Yeah.
So if there was someone who did figure out a vulnerability or a weakness to it, would Bitcoin be able to defend itself fast enough? It always has in the past, but that doesn't mean it'll always work that way in the future. But it's hard for me to imagine somebody could successfully bring down Bitcoin from being the king of currencies. But you could say the same thing about gold or dollars, right? Or any of them. And any currency that's ever held its top position.
Look at it this way. Any investment, any asset has got an Achilles heel. All right. Gold its Achilles heel is it's set in terms of fiat currencies, its value. And we've mastered that art of manipulation. The dollar is that you can print so many of them that they're going to become worthless and they're subject to attack by foreign enemies. And any asset, real estate, hey, it's a real thing. It's a tangible, but it's illiquid. So every asset class has got its weakness. And Bitcoin is that it only exists on a network, and it exists by virtue of a limited number of nodes, which could either physically be blocked or digitally blocked, one or the other, or a combination thereof. So, for instance, if China decided they don't like Bitcoin miners because they use too much electricity and they've outlived their usefulness, and they're not happy because it's used to launder money out of the country, which we know it is, half the Bitcoin nodes in the world or more reside in China. So China could just send out soldiers to every single node and shut them all down physically or isolate them from the network. And every single Bitcoin node in the world is known to everybody. So that's its weakness. Its open source is its weakness, and it's a vulnerability that I don't think has ever been addressed adequately. So cryptocurrencies 2.0 coming, and not to mention the hacking of the exchanges and the hacking of individual people's wallets. Okay. But that's, to me, is a secondary thing because it's a localized problem. The architecture of Bitcoin, its distribution, is a systemic vulnerability that at some point is going to be attacked. And will it survive it? That's what I want to know.
Well, maybe it'll pull a lizard dropping its tail maneuver. And if China or Zimbabwe or anyone decides, wow, we don't want this out of our control currency available to our residents, that's entirely possible. But that's as much of an attack on China and its own people as it would be on Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. You're right in that it could be one vector of attack. Another one could be, well, let's just wait for anybody who has Bitcoin to come up for air, right? Yeah. Like if you're never in any need of anything that has anything to do with fiat, then I guess you could probably, maintain your Bitcoin independence longer, right? Yeah. But if you ever came up for air, they'd probably try to catch you there. And so that's obviously another weakness as well. But I also think that the open source could probably move faster than the governments unless something amazingly drastic happened. If all the world governments got together and decided, hey, let's just shut down all traffic, or let's backdoor all traffic and find out where these things are, or anything, right?
Doesn't even have to be governments.
Oh yeah, world living conditions that we'd have other problems, I think, in order to stop it.
But look, if Facebook wanted to, Facebook could do it. All right. If Google wanted to shut it down, Google could do it. Now with Libra coming out, Facebook might at some point have a motive to do it. And it doesn't have to shut it down for very long, Eric. It's only got to shut it down for at most 72 hours, deny price discovery. And all of a sudden, that will undermine confidence. And that'll be at the end of the cryptocurrency as we know it. Then they'll have to go to the next architecture. It's all feasible. All could be done. It could be just somebody playing the futures. All right. You sell it short. and then you pull the plug on all the nodes, and all of a sudden there's no market, and you have infinite, profit on your short position. My point is that just like dollar bills in your pocket, well, besides inflation, they can get stolen from you, and or any other number of things could occur that do it. I'm just saying the possibilities there. I'm not saying it's going to be done tomorrow or another time. I'm just saying that is a consideration that every reasonable investor has to make.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Trilogy Metals is a world-class developer in Alaska's Ambler Mining District. The company already possesses 8 billion pounds of copper, 3 billion pounds of zinc, over 1 million gold-equivalent ounces, and now over 77 million pounds of cobalt. Trilogy's Arctic project boasts an after-tax net present value of $1.4 billion with a 33% IRR. Trilogy is led by an experienced management team with proven success in discovering and developing projects in Alaska. The company is well capitalized, has no debt, and possesses strong institutional support. Trilogy trades on the New York and Toronto exchanges under the ticker symbol TMQ. To learn more, go to trilogymetals.com. That's trilogymetals.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
I can't disagree with that as something to consider as a possible risk. I probably wouldn't want to put a $20 bill on the percentages of that. Right? I wouldn't want to bet on what's the likelihood of us finding ourselves in the conditions where someone with the power to pull that off actually did it. I am a little bit relieved by the possibility that you can run a full Bitcoin node on a Raspberry Pi computer that is $65,
Very
right?
true.
So it could become more democratized if it needed to be. And I'll also kind of finish off with the statement that the difference, the price of Bitcoin, I think, would suffer more in what you just described than the actual network itself. And so you brought up a really good point that if someone was trying to do a master plan, break the Bank of England type of attack, or corner the silver market Hunt Brothers type of attack, right? That would be easier than actually shutting down the network. If you were to find some way of making it dark for just long enough that the price would change, that then you could play that as a market manipulation. That's probably more of an attack than actually shutting down all the nodes or interfering with all of the nodes, because I think the market might be more susceptible to that.
Well, the only thing.
That's just the price, though. That's not the workability of the whole thing.
But once the price can be attacked successfully at random, it will. That's really damaging credibility-wise. And something like that might have happened in that $1,500 flash crash Bitcoin had last week. The $1,500 flash crash in a matter of seconds. It was down the end of last week.
It could have been just a whale dropping 20,000 Bitcoin into the market to liquidate, right? Or to buy back. Or, obviously all of these scenarios are possible and very interesting to kind of game out.
Yeah, they become more likely.
Because it is a young market and it is fast moving, and there's a lot of historical incidents of someone who figures they can move a market.
Hey.
Right? This wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah, I would just point to, if you ever read the book Noble House, the Noble House had the advantage when ships would come in from China or from overseas. It had the best view of the harbor, and they had signals worked out between the ship coming in and the Noble House, so they could immediately exercise trading instructions and take advantage, do arbitrages on various markets taking place within Hong Kong. And this is really kind of no different. And look, if you have the ability to do it, it's not illegal. Look, I'm sure that the Zuck has no love lost for the Winklevoss twins and would just really feel terrible if the Genesis exchange just
another
blew
really
apart.
Interesting aspect of that, right? Is there any kind of personality clash that might materialize in this, because you're right. I mean, a lot of us think that most markets are big enough that it would take a billionaire to rock them.
Or 72.
But that's what we're talking about now, right? Is you're talking about billionaires on other sides of the same coin.
So no pun intended.
Something to keep in mind. That could be why some people are waiting until they see Fidelity and Bakkt and E-Trade and the banks and the Visas and whatnot to get involved, because if you're worried about what Mark Zuckerberg's team might do to your previously thought independent currency, then you might think, well, I'd rather have Visa on my side to help guide me through this, right? And that may be why some of us adopted sooner and some of us will adopt later.
Yeah,
is we're looking for maybe a big friend to walk through the darkness with us.
Do you think that the Zuck as they call him, would take a little bit of pleasure if Genesis lost 50% of its value in 2 days? You think he might get a few laughs out of that?
I'd like to think he wouldn't, but
people
I don't know him personally well enough to give him the benefit of that doubt.
People are people.
So, yeah.
Hey, people are people. Grudges persist.
People are people.
Grudges persist, and debts eventually are canceled or paid. So, payback, the ultimate. Hey, let's talk about Libra, Facebook coin, as it were. Impressions. How is it going to work? It's a stable coin, so it's fixed to the value of something, whether it's dollars or whatever. But it seems to me, what I know about these things, you could conceivably change its fixed. Well, you can adjust its value. Its value could be adjusted. What is your take on it?
Yeah, I'll agree with all of that. I'm of two minds on this, and they're oil and water, right? They don't perfectly merge. My two minds on this. One is it's Facebook, so be careful. It's data, so be really careful.
It's data,
right? It's
personal data.
It's real data that is attached to real people. So, boy, you got to be careful with that.
I like the way you think.
And that's not a unique position. I do hope, and this is maybe a little bit of my optimistic naivety side, that I do hope that
you are a millennial.
Some sort of aspect of this. I hope that because they are using this as a basket of what they call, air quotes, stable currencies, right? That I hope that there's incentive for some of the poorer performing currencies in the world to behave better. Because if you were borderline of being what might be included in this basket of currencies, let's make up a country name and call it Neronia or something, right? And you're borderline being accepted into this, you might think, what do I have to do? Almost like the hoops that European countries jump through to be in the EU. What do I have to do to be part of this? Because being outside of it could mean that your residents prefer the Libra currency over your native currency if it's a poorly performing currency, right? So the naive part of me hopes that this will be a force for stability and improvement around the world. That if you had a borderline, like there's nothing that can help a horrible currency, right? Your 1,000% inflation currencies,
Venezuela,
there's nothing they're going to be able to do to compete with Libra.
Venezuela,
but if you're borderline, you might say, what do we have to do? Do we balance the budget? Do we behave better? Do we stop printing quite so many? And so I'm holding out hope that there will be some positive aspects of this by the nature of a fluid, quote unquote, world currency, right? Because there could be a billion or 2 billion people immediately adopting this. Now, with that said, obviously, all of the arguments you just made about is China going to allow it? Are they going to block off the endpoints? What's the price that you have to pay? And I don't think I'm going to tell anybody who listens to your work anything they haven't already thought of, that whenever a tech company enters a new market, what's the price you pay for access to, let's say, China, right? What's the price you pay? And some of them haven't even been able to be successful in that. Some of them have come home with their tail between their legs, like Uber in China, et cetera. So what's the price you pay? What are you giving up? What's the deal that you've made in order for your currency to be adopted in some of these new places? And so It's literally just a layer on top of a basket of currencies, which I think that's going to be a big shock to a lot of people. This will be the first time most people play with a currency beyond their native currency. And by that, I mean, most consumers, especially American consumers, the only time we touch other currencies is if we're going to go overseas and we buy some euro in advance, or you're going to go to Mexico and you trade over to pesos or something like that, right? We do it kind of as needed with other currencies. Or you might buy a Starbucks gift card for $100, and
Right.
it's $100 and it's always worth $100. Or if you're going on a short vacation, you put a couple of $1,000s into pesos or euro or something like that, right? And you spend them on your trip and you cash them back in the airport on the way back, and you don't do the math. But with Libra, I think people might start doing the math. And you put $100 onto something like Libra, expecting to spend it. You come back 6 months later. If it's not worth $100, this might be the first time normal people are awoken to currency fluctuations. And as stable as Libra claims it's going to be, unless it's all in the same currency, it's going to be less stable than, 1 equals 1,
Right.
in my mind. So that could also be kind of an eye opener for people. I think most people, I don't think I'm going to get much of an argument. Most people have given up on the notion that we're not willing to share our privacy, right? There's those of us who aren't willing to share our privacy, and the rest of the people that use social media just don't care. And I think we're going to have an eye-opening moment for people to say, well, I don't know if I'm willing to gamble on currency fluctuations. If it's a percent or two, nobody will notice.
Yeah,
But we've seen a dollar that's just outperformed like crazy lately, right? Anybody who doesn't think the dollar has been on a tear hasn't been paying attention. Now it's given back a little bit, but what are these stable currencies? Let's go all the way back to one of the first things you mentioned. What is this basket of currencies we're talking about? What's the percentages? Are they going to change them? Is there a mastermind behind this? It's going to be dipping in and out of currencies, right? Trying to find this right balance. And then the people that are playing Angry Birds on their cell phones, this might be their first exposure to, hey, I put $100 in there. Where's my $100?
Yeah, well,
they may not have ever thought of that before.
Used to be when you went to Europe, you were very aware of the currency exchange. You go to Canada, if you travel, you're aware of it. In Europe, they were very aware of it because you went like 15 minutes, you're in a new country, new currency.
Right.
Then the euro came along,
right,
and it kind of canceled that awareness that you as an individual would have of currency rate fluctuations. And now it's mainly business and investors, speculators. But in any event, I think beware of beware of websites bearing gifts, right? Beware of social media platforms bestowing gifts upon you.
Yeah,
but certainly
you nailed it there.
Yeah,
yeah.
It does certainly
especially if it's free.
Yeah,
right. It's all free.
No, it's never free. There's a price. You're the product.
But, I understand. That was a very sarcastic.
Yeah, I get it. It's like free healthcare.
Quote unquote free.
It's like free college.
Yeah.
Same difference.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Hey.
Right.
So
yeah.
But you're a crypto expert. Let's look at it from the standpoint of Facebook's supply chain. All right. And all of the vendors, the hundreds of thousands of vendors that they do business with, that they buy things from. If they just say to the entire supply chain, tomorrow, we're not going to pay you in dollars anymore. We're going to pay you in Libra coin, but you can convert it immediately to dollars. We're just doing this because that way we can authenticate every single transaction and know that you're not ripping us off, connected to the contract, etc. It's in the blockchain, and everybody. If your biggest customer is Facebook? What the hell are you going to do? You don't have a choice, do you?
Right.
Right.
Right. And then how many of people around the world will say, "I'll take a piece of my pay in this Libra currency."
Since I can change
it. If it's zero, that's going to be interesting. If it's anything but zero, that's also going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Right. If there's this money moving around, I'm going to be pretty interested to find out how sticky is this currency.
Yeah.
Do people hold on to it, or do they get rid of it immediately. So
I think starting out,
it's going to be a pretty interesting social experiment to see.
Starting out,
and how much of that will we even be able to find out about?
Right. But starting out, they get rid of it. And then as they get comfortable, they hold it for a couple of days, then a couple of weeks, then a couple of months, and then it becomes money. As long as the confidence is there. And they can make it convertible into stock, so you can use it to buy Facebook stock. Could be a dividend reinvestment program. They can pay their dividends in their Libra coin, and it never even affects their cash reserves. I mean, this has so many permutations. I mean, every dividend paying company out there has to look and say, hey, if we just give it to them in our currency, and then they can use it to buy our shares with no commission or anything. You know, it's like a dividend reinvestment plan that you never have to pay cash out on. I mean, it's brilliant when you think about it.
It could be. What really, the one big message, though, that I just can't get past is if, in fact, and there's no reason to believe they're not doing this, but if, in fact, this is all backed by a basket of quote-unquote stable currencies, then these currencies, we all know the long-term effect of holding currencies, right, is they all depreciate. So you could make an argument about whether or not cryptocurrencies have the same depreciation schedule, yes or no, and you buy stocks so you can beat inflation, right? We all know all of that stuff.
Right. Yeah.
But if all Libra is backed by a basket of currencies which over time become worth less and less and less, you know, is Libra in any way acting like or mimicking a central bank or a world bank? Do we even need a central bank anymore? Yeah. Is the person who determines this mix, is it 60% dollars and 40% something else? Who determines that mix? Is that a bank board of governors now?
Maybe.
Who are these people, and how much control do they have?
Yeah.
And sure, they're going to have a vested interest in it, but I'm intrigued by the fact that they're going to be buying short-term instruments that do have a yield. The Libra won't have a yield on its own, but according to the white paper, they're going to use the earnings of these short-term instruments to pay for some of the expenses of managing Libra, right? To keep it free to use.
Yeah, so-called.
And to me, that sounds a lot like a bank, right? Overnight repurchases and
repos,
short-term papers, right? I mean, We've heard all this stuff before.
Yeah, hypothecation.
The system that already works that way.
Yeah, well, but it'll work a lot more efficiently. And I think the frauds will get found out a lot faster because crypto moves at the speed of light. And you could only pull this scam off for so long before the market is onto you. I mean, that's the great thing about it.
Yeah, that's a possibility. And especially if they hold themselves out as being the least bit available to be audited from an outside source, right? And then you could even just be watching for, well, when does that change?
Yeah.
When does a part of it not available for us to look at? And that could be a flag right there. So, again, a part of me is very optimistic about this, is this could be an improvement.
Yeah, or it could be worse.
Be a possibility that other currencies shape up and that we hold our currencies to a higher standard. I mean, that would be wonderful if people who don't even think about currency start thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, most people don't really consider what money is. You don't care what the value is, as long as you can go pay your rent and buy your groceries and pay your taxes in it. So legal tender rules really are what it's all about, because that's kind of what I would call enforced confidence, forced confidence, right? And you really. It's got fascinating possibilities here, right? Doesn't it?
Well, one of their partners is Uber.
Yeah.
And whenever I pop into a new city, I immediately get an Uber to wherever I'm going, right? And
same here. I hate taxis. I'll never take a taxi for the rest of my life. It's very convenient.
And if I had a balance of Libra, I might pay for my Uber with my Libra. And who knows what the Uber company will do with it. They may pay their driver with the Libra, right?
Yeah.
And I may get an Uber Eats and have them bring me some food and maybe pay for that with Libra. And then do they pay the restaurant with Libra? Does the restaurant pay its vendor with Libra? I think you brought that up before. It's how far does it go?
That's taking it a few steps.
Hold on to it before it turns back into fiat.
Right. That's taking it a few steps out there. If they just, their universe of vendors and users and people that they buy from and people that they sell to, if they accept Libra back from those people, then who knows how it'll grow. But I think they're going to be discrete universes. I think, for instance, Boeing will do their own because they have a supply chain that goes into the hundreds of thousands of companies. They need to track all of these parts to know that they're not counterfeit and that they're certified, et cetera, especially in light of their recent problems. And their footprint is huge on the economy. So these big companies, Amazon, you could see Amazon doing it right afterwards.
How could they not?
Yeah,
they'd be insane. Google and Amazon both let Facebook get that kind of a head start on them.
Yeah, and then you just, like I said, you pay a dividend in Libra or Amazon coins, and then if people cash it in, they could cash it in for shares. You don't really care, and you get to pay a dividend that's almost like a stock dividend with no taxable event occurring, because a Libra is not a taxable event. Getting paid Libras, I mean, I guess you could say it's a payment in kind, but I don't think there's any way they're going to be able to track it and collect taxes on it. And then they get it back, and they never had to put out any cash. So you could have a 10% Libra dividend that really winds up costing you a couple of percent of earnings, whereas a 10% dividend in dollars would be way more expensive and unwieldy. I mean, I just love the concept of it, and I'm thrilled that we've come to this point. Like I say, but to me, Libra is crypto 2.0. It really bears no resemblance.
There's a lot of possibilities to it. There's certainly a lot of possibilities to it.
And our possibilities have run out because we are out of time. But Eric, where do we find you these days? How can I read your work?
Best place to go is to stansberryresearch.com and look around for crypto.
All right. Very cool.
We also have Porter for years. A Twitter that's the Stansberry Research Twitter is also the same thing, just Stansberry Research.
All right. Well, we love Porter. One of the brightest investment minds out there in the alternate investment universe. He's been on the show before.
He's a rock star.
A great guy and brilliant. And anybody connected with Stansberry, we always love to have on the show. Hey, Eric, it's been great having you. And we will talk to you again real soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Take care.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.